You know what's crazy, man? Every once in a while, you get a fight that doesn't just feel like another boxing match. It feels like a moment, like something that's going to be talked about years from now when people look back and ask who really ruled this era. And September 13 is one of those nights because this isn't just Canelo versus Crawford. This is of two dudes who've been carving their names into history in completely different ways. And now they're about to collide under the brightest lights imaginable. And the thing that makes it so wild is you can't script this. You can't fake it. It's raw. It's dangerous. It's everything that makes combat sports so addicting. So buckle in, because what we're about to dive into isn't just analysis. It's the brutal reality of what happens when two of the best fighters alive decide there's only room for one king at the top. The thing about this fight, man, the real core of why it's so fascinating is the clash of styles. Because on one side, you've got Canelo, this absolute tank of a human being, a guy who's made a career out of breaking people down with raw power, devastating body shots, and this kind of patient stalking pressure that forces fighters into mistakes. He doesn't just swing wild. He cuts off the ring. He makes you feel like the space is closing in on you. And then he digs those hooks to the body that just rip the air out of your lungs. And once you slow down, once your legs stop moving, that's when he lowers the hammer. But then you look at Crawford, and it's a completely different animal because this dude is like a chess player in a fist fight. He's got that insane boxing IQ where he can literally download you in the first couple of rounds, figure out your rhythm, and then flip the switch. And the crazy part is he can fight both orthodox and southpaw seamlessly, which is a nightmare for anyone trying to game plan, because the moment you think you've got his angles figured out, he switches stance and suddenly you're eating punches from places you didn't even think were possible. So stylistically, you've got this bulldozer in Canelo who thrives on breaking your will, and you've got this slick assassin in Crawford who thrives on exposing weaknesses and making elite fighters look ordinary. And that's why this fight is so compelling, because it's not just about who's stronger or faster, it's about who can impose their style on the other first. Can Canelo trap him, slow him down, and pound him into submission the way he's done with so many others? Or can Crawford stay elusive, use his timing, his adaptability, and his precision to make Canelo look flat-footed and frustrated? And when you put those two archetypes together, you realize that neither guy is comfortable playing second fiddle. Both of them are used to being the one who dictates the pace, who forces the other fighter into their game. And when two masters of control collide, that's where the brutality comes in, because someone's game plan is going to collapse under the weight of the other. And watching that unfold is why this fight feels less like just another matchup and more like a collision of philosophies in combat. What's wild about this fight is when you start looking at the whole age and timing factor, because on paper, people might glance and say, well, Crawford is the older guy, right? But that doesn't tell the whole story, because in boxing, age is not just a number. It's about mileage. It's about how many wars you've been in, how many times your body has been pushed to the limit. And Canelo, even though he's technically younger, has been fighting at the highest level since he was a teenager. He's got all these years of championship rounds, all these big nights where he's had to go deep into the trenches. And that adds up, man, it's like miles on a car. The engine might still run, but the wear and tear is real. So when you think about timing, Crawford feels fresher. He hasn't taken as much sustained punishment. He's been smarter about how he fights. He doesn't get into brawls unless he knows he's got the edge. And that's why he looks so sharp at this stage. He's still got that snap, that explosiveness, and the reflexes that make him so dangerous. Whereas with Canelo, you start to see moments where his legs don't move the way they used to. He's a little more flat-footed. He's relying more on timing and counter shots rather than being able to just outspeed a guy. And that's natural. It happens to everyone. But the question is whether that timing difference is enough for Crawford to exploit. Because when a fighter like him with insane ring IQ sees just a split-second slower reaction, he capitalizes on it. And that's where things get scary for Canelo. But at the same time, you can't count out the fact that Canelo's experience and his ability to slow down a fight with body work could be the ultimate equalizer. Because if he can make Crawford feel that weight, make him less springy on his feet. Suddenly the age advantage flips. Suddenly it's the fresher guy who looks old in there. And that's what makes this so fascinating, because it's not just age, it's timing, it's wear and tear. It's when your body starts betraying you, even though your mind is still razor sharp. And when you've got two guys at this level, the fight might literally come down to who shows those cracks first. And that's the brutal reality of combat sports. When you talk about pound for pound legacy, man, this fight is like the ultimate measuring stick, because both these guys have been floating around that mythical top of the list conversation for years. And here's the thing, pound for pound is such a weird, subjective concept. It's not about weight classes. It's about skill for skill. It's the barbershop argument of who's really the best fighter on the planet if size didn't matter. And for the longest time, Canelo's name has been right there because he's moved up weight, he's collected belts, he's fought killers across divisions, and he's had those iconic nights where he just looked unstoppable. But then you've got Crawford, and his case is almost the opposite. He hasn't had the same variety of weight jumps, but every single guy they've put in front of him, he's dismantled. He's made elite world champions look like amateurs, and that level of dominance is rare. So when you put those two storylines together, this fight becomes less about who wins a belt and more about who gets to etch their name permanently in the history books as the guy of this era. Because if Canelo beats Crawford, even with all the wear and tear, even with people questioning whether he's slowing down, it reinforces the idea that he's not just a great fighter, he's a generational force who took on all comers and still reigned supreme. But if Crawford beats Canelo, especially if he does it in a definitive fashion, then his legacy goes through the stratosphere. He's no longer just the slick technician. He becomes the man who conquered the biggest star in boxing and did it on the grandest stage. And that's why the stakes here feel so insane, because we're not just talking about money or belts. We're talking about immortality. We're talking about the story 20 years from now when fans argue who was the best of their time, and the winner of this fight will be the answer. It's like two kings colliding for one throne, and the pound-for-pound conversation, which is always messy and subjective, suddenly gets a definitive exclamation mark. And that's why this fight is so much bigger than just Canelo versus Crawford. It's about deciding who gets to be remembered as the guy who ruled the fight game when the lights were brightest. What makes this matchup so brutal, man, is that you're not just talking about two guys with skill. You're talking about two dudes who weaponize violence in completely different ways. And when that collides, it's going to get ugly, because Canelo has that signature body punching style where every shot feels like it's ripping years off your life. He's not the guy who just headhunts for highlight reels. He systematically beats the fight out of you, breaks your ribs, takes your legs away, and leaves you standing in front of him like a heavy bag. And that's terrifying, because once you can't move against a guy like him, you're done. And then on the other side, you've got Crawford, who's like a silent executioner. He doesn't just throw punches. He sets traps. He baits you into thinking you're safe. And then he detonates a counter that you never saw coming. And it's not wild power. It's precise, surgical violence. He's the guy that makes you question whether you even belong in the ring with him. And that psychological destruction is just as brutal as Canelo's physical pressure. So when you put them together, you've got one man trying to collapse your body from the inside out, and another trying to dissect your brain with timing and counters. And the truth is, there's no version of this fight that ends clean. Someone is leaving with damage. Someone is leaving broken, maybe not physically knocked out cold, but stripped of something. Their aura, their invincibility, and that's what makes it so scary. Because the brutality here isn't just about blood and knockdowns. It's about the way both these guys fight with such conviction that one of them is going to have to give up a piece of themselves to the other. And when you watch high-level fighters at the absolute peak of their careers, it's almost guaranteed that the clash isn't just competitive, it's destructive. So whether it's Canelo ripping hooks to the liver until Crawford slows, or Crawford timing a switch stance counter that stuns Canelo mid-pressure, there's no safe way out. It's a fight that demands suffering from both sides, and fans are going to witness a kind of violence that isn't reckless, but calculated, cold, and almost inevitable. The thing about this fight that people don't always register is just how insane the pressure and the stakes are. Because you're not dealing with two random contenders here. You're dealing with guys who have built entire legacies that ride on nights like this, and that weight is heavy, man. It's not just about who takes home a belt. It's about who controls the story of this generation of boxing. Canelo's carrying the pressure of being the face of the sport for over a decade. Every time he walks out, it's like he's representing the entire machine of boxing, the arenas, the fans, the Mexican fight culture. And if he slips, if he looks human, the critics are ready to pounce and say the era's over. And on the other side, you've got Crawford, who's been screaming for respect his whole career, who's been overlooked, underpromoted, and even when he dominates, people still question his resume. So for him, this fight is the validation. It's the chance to slam the door on all that doubt. But that also means he's stepping into the ring with the weight of having to prove he belongs under those bright lights against the biggest name in the game. And that's pressure too, because if he loses, people will say he wasn't built for it. And that kind of narrative can haunt a fighter forever. And what makes it even more intense is the fact that boxing is so unforgiving. One mistake, one bad night, and everything you've worked for can get rewritten in an instant. So both of these guys know they can't afford to blink, they can't afford to coast, they have to show up at their absolute best. And that level of high stakes forces a kind of intensity that normal fights just don't have, because it's not just skill versus skill, it's legacy versus legacy versus legacy versus legacy versus reputation versus reputation. And the truth is, the pressure cooker environment is going to reveal who's built for it and who cracks. And as fans, we're not just watching punches, we're watching two men risk everything they've ever been for the right to be remembered as the one who stood tallest when the heat was at its maximum. At the end of the day, man, when you really zoom out and look at this whole thing, what you've got is two absolute masters of the craft stepping into a moment that could define not just their careers, but the entire era of boxing. And that's why it feels so heavy, because this isn't just punches and scorecards. This is legacy. This is pride. This is two men willing to put everything they've built on the line in front of the world. And fights like that don't come around often. So no matter what happens on September 13th, history gets written that night, and we all get to witness it live. That's the beauty of combat sports. It's unpredictable, it's raw, and it forces human beings to show exactly what they're made of under the brightest light. So buckle up, enjoy the chaos, and respect both warriors for even daring to take this risk, because that takes a different kind of courage, and honestly, good luck to both of them. May the better man win, and thank you guys for hanging out, listening, and diving into this wild ride with me. I appreciate every single one of you, and we'll catch you on the other side of this fight.